All right, looks like we have about 18 people on the line, so that's great. And Jessica and Kelly, if you guys are ready, I think we'll go ahead and get started so we can get you back to your business of the day. And this is just the follow-up call to the virtual meeting that we did a couple weeks ago, kind of walking through the tool and explaining it. And we wanted to give you a little while to kind of dig into it. I know some of you have gotten really far and some of you may not have started yet. It's okay. We're here to kind of relieve the stress of that. Remember, the goal is we want to have an accurate cost accounting so we can make sure that we can take the correct story forward to
Be crazy.
get the funding correct. So for today, again, oh, I think somebody's got a live mic on, and there we go. Okay. So for today, myself and Jessica Story from Warren Averett, who has done this survey with us for a number of years on several different iterations for the 1s and 2s. And then Kelly Vaughn from Archibald, as always. And I don't think that our Commissioner, Dr. Medeiros, was able to join us today. But again, we are happy to take whatever questions you have on the fly and get back to you if need be. You see here, can you all still see my screen, Kelly and Jessica? Does that look good? Okay. The project key dates. So the next thing is the submission of the Readiness Cost Survey tool, which is on October 29th. I did send a couple reminders today. I have a couple more to send if you have not reached out to Jessica yet with the contact who will be submitting via the secure site for Warren Averett, because we want to treat your data confidentially. Please email her and let her know who that person is that will be submitting. Anything you want to add on that, Jessica, before I move into the questions?
Just as a reminder, I mean, the information that is being uploaded is, confidential. So I would just limit the number of users, because it is confidential information, a lot of salaries and contracts and things of that nature. So, but email me with who that person is, and I'll go ahead and get you set up. Sometimes that email, it comes from Warren Averett Connect. It may go to spam. If when you email me, I will set it up and let you know that I've set the site up. If you don't receive that email, just let me know, and I'll forward you a link so that you do have access to that.
Thank you, Jessica. And then Jessica will reach out to you with questions. Again, once she starts reviewing the data, that's where perhaps some of the inconsistencies or some of the further need to tease down on some of the items reported on the survey. So she'll reach out to you by the 12th, and we'll want responses to that with supporting documentation back to her by the 19th. So in reality, I think we said, Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, that timeline will probably be a little bit faster. It may not require you'll certainly send before the 12th if you have it, which is more likely to be the case.
That's correct, Liz. As soon as I'm able to get your information and go through it, I'll try to get that back to you as quickly as possible. So the 12th is the drop dead date, but you should expect to hear from me before then.
And then we can, as we do now with uncompensated care for the level 1s and 2s, we can do all testing can be virtual. So if there's a need to do some sort of, virtual where you can share a screen or something like that, we can accommodate that. Anything else to add on that process, Jessica? Are we good?
I think that's good.
Okay. All right, we'll move into what we got so far. Some of this is added from the previous survey, is that I'm still going to serve as your point of contact. So send any additional questions that come up prior to the close of the survey to me. And I will share with Jessica. And again, we will discuss this and we'll talk with those folks, namely Dr. Medeiros and Dr. Ashley, who are involved in the original surveys, just to find out and ensure that we're handling all the items consistently. And if you recall on our original call, we decided to use calendar year 2019 just because 2020 was such an aberrancy with COVID. So all of the items on the survey should be associated with calendar 2019 costs. The survey deadline is by Friday, October 29th. So that is next Friday. Is that correct? Do I have the correct date on there? It seems like Friday is not the 29th. Yes, it is. So next Friday, your completed survey is due. And in order to be able to submit, to upload that to Warren Averett Secure Site, Jessica needs to add your designated contact who will be uploading that to your, for your facility. Okay, so some of the additional questions we got: if I'm the trauma program manager at my level 4 center and I also serve as the registrar, the PI coordinator, the injury prevention coordinator, what amount should I include for those roles on the survey tool? And again, we see this a lot in low volume or rural centers. You would include only the amount that that is compensated for the trauma program manager role. And then there's a little notation aside that you can include the additional job responsibilities that you have. And we anticipate that this will be very common for those of you who are at the level 4 facilities. Any other follow-up questions to that? Please feel free to chime in. We want this to be as interactive as possible so that you can have the information you need to get the right information to complete the survey tool. All right, we'll move on. So if you don't have those positions, trauma registrar, PI coordinator, don't include costs for those. Only include, if the trauma program manager is responsible for those roles, just include the amount only for the trauma program manager and then notate the additional responsibilities that are included per the job description. You might be doing things that aren't necessarily included, but we're specifically interested in those things that can be validated by documentation. This is another common one. My center was designated at a different level in calendar year 2019. So how do you report this? And we're aware that that is the case for several of you. So report your costs for calendar year 2019. And then at the end of the survey, you'll notice there's questions about your level. And so just indicate what level you were at that so we can attribute those costs accordingly. And I know this just came up for a center that was not designated. So we were trying to, sort of figure out what startup costs look like. We are not going to be able to use that for purposes of this, but that can inform that process. Next question is, should level 3s include ACS TQIP, the Trauma Quality Improvement Program costs? And absolutely. That is a big cost associated with your trauma center for participation in ACS TQIP. So those should be reported as part of your registry costs on line 46 of the survey tool. And remember, if some of you may not handle your digital innovations, which is the registry software company we use, or ESO, is now the parent company that took over DI. You may not handle your invoices directly, but make sure you know what your amount is to report for all components of your registry. You probably have a software cost. You also should have maintenance costs, and then you should also have a report writer cost. So if you don't know what that is, you can reach out to them and ask them for an invoice that shows you what your costs are. And for Jessica's purposes, if the costs are very different among centers, we're going to need your invoice. So that would be a good thing to have, just so that you can show what your costs are. Any other item that was repeated here? Several folks at the level 3 center level had questions about that. Any other registry related costs? Questions? Okay, we'll move on to number 7. In terms of the org chart that we are asking for, the calendar year 2019 org chart is the chart that should be used. And the reason for that is it will be used to validate the information that you report in terms of the allocation of FTE and the reporting structure, who's the highest level person accountable, et cetera, and the attribution of costs for those roles. Just a logistics question here about how do we obtain a signature on an Excel file. The signature page should be printed and sent separately along with the Excel file. So you'll actually have 2 files to submit to the Warren Averett Secure Site. It would be your Excel file. Excel is just much easier for Jessica to work with if you send it that way. And then the printed signature page can be sent separately. And then the next 2 questions were the same question about where do we allocate our TQIP costs? And again, that's line 46. And then the final question that was submitted is around CE or CME for the trauma program managers and trauma medical directors for level 3 and level 4 centers. And while the text in the orange book strongly encourages CE and CME for trauma program managers and trauma medical directors, the criterion deficiency associated with that is actually specific to level 1 and level 2 centers, which is a little bit of a shame. I know some of you do have costs associated with that, but because we cannot directly link a CD to that, we cannot capture those costs. And that was it for all of the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So Kelly or Jessica, do you have any thoughts or anything to add on any of those items? And we can open it up to additional questions.
I do not, Liz.
All right. Anybody have anything else on the tool that they would like to ask? And just curious if people feel like they're able to get through it, or is it been difficult to try to grab those costs that we're asking for capture here? Okay, silence. We just want to make sure, and if you feel like your Friday deadline, because it's hard to gauge, I think some of you are really far into this and others, I think maybe struggling a little bit. So please just give us as much lead time as possible if you're struggling, and we're willing to, set up a one-to-one call and try to kind of help you across the finish line, because this exercise is going to help all of your colleagues and help us really figure out what do we need to do with the reimbursement costs. This is going to be a huge focus of the legislative session for us. Dr. Ashley and I are actually addressing the Georgia Chamber next Friday, and they are very interested to hear about rural initiatives. So we are going to highlight that we're doing this readiness cost survey in order to figure out what these costs actually are, and to use it as a platform to ask for more money.
Hey Liz, it's Kelly, and I know that I presented this tool, but and have kind of slept with it for a month now, but there are still issues moving forward as you're trying to answer all these questions. And so I can tell you from my perspective going through this, and I think from a 3-4 center, we need to think about when you get to that line 20 and 21, which is education outreach coordinator and injury prevention coordinator, you may not have that set person because you have a person that wears all the hats. but you may pull in, like you may have an educator for your organization that helps you with TNCC or ENPC or any of the trauma classes, and counting their salary or the percentage of time they spend helping you organize those classes or do those classes needs to be considered there. Or maybe someone in marketing helps you with your injury prevention, because in the community outreach and the education at the end, you cannot report any salaries or anything there. It's only travel, courses, training, and supplies. So in order to capture that person's time that helps trauma implement the different activities that they have to do to be a center, from a salary perspective, I think that's the only place you can put that. Right?
I just pulled up the tool. Can you see it on your
Yes.
screen? Okay.
Yes.
And so I'm going down to line 29, right?
No, 20 and 21, right
20
there.
and 20. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you're saying if other folks in the building participate in those roles,
Correct.
or they should the cost to that be
The salary
attributed?
cost.
Yeah.
Bec-
I think if you and Jessica, I'd love to hear you weigh in on this. I mean, I think if you can validate that they participate in it by a job description, then again, because you know how ACS looks at that for your level 1 centers, you have to have someone with injury prevention in their job description. It doesn't have to be a 1.0 FTE, but you do have to have someone with dedicated role for injury prevention. So they want to see that documented in the job description. So Jessica, this might be something that we might have to talk about offline and get back. But if they could
Yeah.
send you the validation of the job description that shows that they support that, does that
Yeah,
mean
that-
those costs could be reported?
I think that that's probably a very appropriate source of proof for that as a job description. And then also when you're estimating the percentage of time, that really, we're looking for something that's reasonable. And so any kind of information that you can provide that really supports that percentage, that allocation, that would also be very helpful.
Maybe a list of the activities similar to what you would report out for any like designation or verification year, where they ask you to say, what activities did you do? So if you have someone that you're claiming it's full-time, let's say for injury prevention, but maybe they did one activity a quarter or something, one class a quarter, it would be hard to justify that full-time cost attribution for that position. Does that make sense?
That does to me, Liz.
Okay.
Well,
So I
and I
think
think too about, well, like from an education perspective, if salaries get charged to my trauma department to help teach these courses.
Oh, that's a great point, Kelly. You're right, because I have worked other places where if the course is being taught by staff members in another department, for example, the ER, the
Correct.
ICU, PACU,
Correct.
those hourly rates or whatever, some facilities do a one, what do you call it? Like a rate or a
Some sort of base
standardized,
rate. Mhm.
yeah, standardized base rate for education. And they did that because obviously, nurses making what nurses make an hour, it becomes hard to pay that hourly rate if it's 2 days, 16-hour course. So whatever rate is charged to your department for education, I think that's what Jessica really needs, is the sort of accounting forensics behind why we're saying we're attributing those charges. So, and Jessica, if the facility had that and could show that, would that help you?
Yes, and if there's some sort of like agreement that states that rate, that's, you know, good support. Um, but I'm not sure what that really looks like. So I would have to rely on you guys to tell me, is there an agreement that states that rate, or, how is that communicated? But that's what I would be looking for.
And I think just showing that the charges, whatever they were attributed to your cost center. If you have your own trauma cost center, which all of you should, by the way, if you don't have that, you should have your own cost center so you can keep track of costs. This would actually be very helpful to this exercise. That those would be really, that would be the other piece of the forensic part for Jessica to validate what you're reporting. That was a good point, Kelly. That was a great thing. And I could see that being the case for education and outreach, and also for injury prevention. And for some of the level 4s that I know of, I know some of your hospital quality folks do some of the work for you. If you don't, say, for example, if you don't have a PI coordinator and you are the trauma program manager plus the ED manager, a disaster preparedness coordinator. So, we don't want, certainly not advocating for stretching or blurring the lines in any way, but if there is a documented paper trail as to what that person's contribution is to your program, by all means, we want that reported, and just having that paper trail to kind of validate what that looks like. Anything else? Any other questions? Like we have 25 people on the line, so I can't imagine that you would all call in without having some some questions. I'm just going to pop in the chat real quick. If you don't want to ask the question, please feel free to just kind of type it in the chat, because the question that you have, I'm sure, is going to be on everyone else's mind as well. And I know this is the first time that we're doing it for this group, so we're bound to come across some of those things, like similar to what Kelly just brought up. I'm just running through the rest of the tool here, just in case it jogs anybody's memory. All right, well, if no other questions, I'm happy to end the call, and would still invite you to submit questions to me. And I'm happy to update the FAQ document and send it back out for those things that come in. And then I would encourage you, reach out early and often if you're struggling, because we want to, we're committed to helping you get this project across the finish line and getting your data in so that we can get the best cost data. And so just let us know if you foresee any issues. Anything else, Kelly or Jessica, on departing? Just make sure you get your contact to Jessica if you haven't already for the access.
That's it for now from me,
Good.
Liz.
All
That's
right,
fine.
good. Well, we look forward to getting your submissions and really teasing through this and then sharing with you. I know all of you also sit on our rural subcommittee, so we will probably not be able to get another rural subcommittee meeting together before the commission meeting on November 18th, but we will see if we can squeak one in before the Christmas holiday, and then look forward to pre-scheduling the meetings for 2022, so you can all have them sort of preloaded in your calendar, and they would just be a little bit more expected. And then a lot of the work that group will do will be relative to the findings of this. So thank you all for leaning into this and really, helping us to get the best information we can. And we look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.